We know that New England had a lot of injuries going down the stretch. When you look at Colin Kaepernick and some of the talk about the media over here in San Francisco and even nationwide, they're trying to pick up on it. Now, obviously, John Elway went to Stanford. He's a California kid out of Southern California. I believe he went to Granada Hills High School. He was drafted actually as a Major League Baseball player as well as drafted into
the with the Yankees.
Yeah. So he knows what it's like to have talent and be around talent. So how does he know?
Also, Colin Kaepernick, Charlton, was a baseball player.
Yeah.
You know, the kid had a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. He was drafted by the Chicago Cubs. So he's a multi-talented athlete such as John Elway was.
And like Elway, he was an all-state high school baseball player out of Pittman High School in Turlock before he went to Nevada and became one of the rare quarterbacks in Division I to pass for 4,000 yards, actually 10,000 yards, and rush for 1,000 yards each year. So incredible athlete. But what is John Elway, who just won a Super Bowl, who also he won 2 Super Bowls as an athlete, even though he came up on the bottom side of the scoreboard as well. But what does he know that Trent Baalke in San Francisco in our own backyard doesn't know? Why is he trying to bring in a player that they're trying to get rid of over here in San Francisco? If anything,
why does Elway know? Elway has football knowledge. He has football mentality. Trent Baalke inherited a team. It's a typical rich boy getting a new car and never did anything for it.
Well, not just
what Baalke had.
Not just Baalke. It's this Bay Area media. It's like the people that didn't understand how bad football was before Harbaugh got here. And even when they traced out who was the linebacker coach for? He played for the Bears. It's slipping my mind at the time.
Singletary.
Singletary was 8-8, and they ran him out of town. There were people complaining that they let go of the last guy, and he only won 4 games. But
he got paid $14.1 million for winning 4
games. Well, I look at Kaepernick, Big C, 17-6 in his first 2 seasons as a starter with the 49ers under a quarterback mind, Jim Harbaugh, who also has a quarterback mind in Denver? John Elway. So for the people in San Francisco that built this $1.2 billion stadium down in Santa Clara, and they're asking people to pay for season tickets, just think about it. What does John Elway know that Baalke doesn't know? Why are they trying to let this guy go instead of bringing in someone that can work with him? But be that as it may, that's part of life in the NFL. And Big C, I know there's been so much happening in the world of sports. As we look around the league, you know, running backs have been a premium. And even for Denver, C.J. Anderson, he was a leading rusher in the playoffs. He's going from Denver to Miami, a 4-year, $18 million contract. You do need a running game, Big C, to make your quarterback successful. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, all the players right now are just running for the money. And this is a shame that a Super Bowl team will be destroyed like this. Denver has 18 free agents. They're going to potentially lose 18 players off the Super Bowl team. And a lot of those were starters. So when you look at the team being decimated and going to have to be built up from the scrap heap, Denver will be fortunate to make the playoffs. And you got to think about it, Charlton. They don't have a quarterback. The only quarterback they have is a quarterback that was on the practice roster last year. So he's not truly a player. So you got to go out and get somebody. Would it be a perfect fit for Colin Kaepernick? Most likely it would, because he would have a fresh start in Denver. He comes in. You don't have to expect to go back to the Super Bowl. Just keep them competitive and learn the system. Gary Kubiak, a former quarterback, he was the backup to John Elway when he played in Denver.
That's right.
Now, this is a quarterback-minded team, organization, from the general manager to the head coach. They're on the same page, same philosophy. So if Colin Kaepernick could end up in Denver out of San Francisco, it most likely would be a great move in his career.
Well, you know, Chip Kelly has to be somewhat disappointed, because you would think, why would he come to a team, obviously for the money, like Jerry Maguire in the movie Show Me the Money with Cuba Gooding Jr.? Maybe he is a real agent in football, because I don't believe that Chip Kelly would come to San Francisco and want a guy who's immobile, which is what Gabbard is. He wants a guy like Kaepernick. But in favor of Kaepernick, I'd be so proud of this young man going on to an organization that actually appreciates his talent. And I think if they have that defense, if they can have a semblance of a defense that they had last season with a guy like Kaepernick that can open up the offense, I think you're looking at Denver as one of the top 2 teams again in the AFC Big C.
Well, you know, Gary Kubiak did that before. When he was a quarterback coach in Denver prior to getting the head coaching job with the Houston Texans, he brought in a player from the Arizona Cardinals, Jake Plummer, Jake the Snake. turned Jake around, made him an all-pro quarterback. Now, Jake was known as a running quarterback when he was at Arizona State and when he was with the Cardinals.
Yes.
But when he came to Denver, working under Gary Kubiak, he had a couple back-to-back 4,000-yard passing seasons, Charlton.
Well, when you think about what it takes to get to the championship, I look at the Carolina Panthers. They had a horrible game in the Super Bowl against Denver, Super Bowl 50. But if you look at them on the defensive side of the line, Big C, which is your specialty, defensive end Charles Johnson, he agreed to a major pay cut to return to Carolina. He received a one-year, $3 million contract. Now, I look at what's happening in the world of football. There's not been a lot of talk about the defenses out there lately. But I do know that defense wins championships. And I am going to say that even though it may not make a big difference for them because they just have to rebuild that whole organization, when I look at the New York Giants and they agreed to a 5-year, $85 million contract with defensive end Vernon Oliver from the Miami Dolphins, what do you think they need to help Manning get back into a Super Bowl from the New York perspective, Big C?
What they need is an offensive line to help Manning get back to the Super Bowl. That's what you need with the Giants.
Yeah.
And you look at these big signings on defense, and I'll go back about 6 years ago. The Washington Redskins gave Albert Haynesworth over $100 million. They got him from the Tennessee Titans in free agency.
Did you say $100 million?
Haynesworth's career lasted another 2 years because $60 million of that was guaranteed. You got $60 million in guaranteed money. You have no incentive to play. You're out there trying not to get hurt. And that's what happened with Albert Haynesworth. 3 years later, he was out of the league completely because he just didn't care about football anymore. The next example, look last year what the Miami Dolphins did with Ndamukong Suh. $117 million, Charlton.
Man, you're saying $100 million.
$117 million. You know what his productivity was?
What?
One quarterback sack. He got one quarterback sack last year because he wasn't used to playing in the heat and he wasn't used to playing in the grass.
Well,
and then you talked about Vernon just getting the money, leaving Miami, going to the Giants for $85 million. I mean, it's madness. It's great to see these young men make that kind of money. Trust me.
Yeah.
To have an opportunity in life to make millions of dollars to do what a kid does for free is a tremendous opportunity. So you can't say anything bad about the players making the money because the guy that's wealthy is paying them the money. The owner has that kind of money to pull out his paycheck, his checkbook, and write out the check. And he's not wincing. He's not running out of ink either. So they're going to toss the money around. The players are going to take it. The productivity is not going to be there because if you look at any team in the NFL over the last decade, over the last 2 decades since free agency has been rampant, what team has gone out through free agency and come back and won a Super Bowl? The closest one is Denver, and they won it with their defense. John Elway put over $100 million into his secondary, and it paid off because they can shut down opposing quarterbacks.
My goodness.
The defensive line is not where you put the money when you want to stop an opposing team. You put that money in your linebacking core and in your secondary.
Well, speaking of handing out $100 million, the NFL owners are handing out $100 million like it's a Happy Meal for McDonald's. And speaking of $100 million, this segment is sponsored to you by Trilok Investment Corporation. We specialize in commercial and residential funding for up to $500 million. Call 916-896-5757. And as we transition over the last 10 minutes of the program, Big C, I want to just touch on the NBA. I know NBA is big right now, and of course, can't say enough about the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry and what they're doing. But as I did mention earlier, I was at the game last night, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Sacramento Kings with my son, and we were talking about Kyrie Irving and how dominant of a player. He has an amazing crossover. Went for 30 points last night as Cleveland beat Sacramento 120-111. I will say that LeBron James, as an athlete, I know he's not a Steph Curry. I don't even think he's as good as someone like a Kyrie Irving, but he's going to get the #1 billing on that team. I don't think the Cavaliers will have Kyrie Irving and LeBron James there next year. I know that Kyrie is such a dominant player. He needs to have the ball more in his hand, which doesn't please LeBron James. However, my question is, Big C, Cleveland's playing at the LA Lakers tonight. It would be the last time potentially that Kobe would play against LeBron James. I think it's an audition for LeBron James to go to Los Angeles. I know people don't see it that way, but that's the limelight. He can't really do much more in his career. He's already very wealthy, but the Hollywood angle, I think that might be an appeal. They could build a team around here in the next 3 years.
Well, but you got to get players that want to play with LeBron. It's almost like that Carmelo Anthony scenario. Who really wants to play with him? Because when you show up, you're playing a second and third fiddle. LeBron James has not made any player around him better in his career. And if you look at the plethora of players that he's had around, he's had a lot of former All-Stars. He's even had Shaq on the team with him. And Shaq was dismal when he was there in Cleveland. And you look at other players that he's had, even when he was in Miami, if not for the Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, former All-Stars, being there and understood how to play the team concept. But when you go play with a great player or potential great player, you have a tendency to sit back and watch him because you've always figured he was such a dominant player and you don't want to take the ball out of his hand. LeBron is a very vocal and boisterous player, and you see him on the sidelines being animated with teammates. And what that does is make a lesser player, mentality-wise, take a step back. You don't see that action in San Antonio with a Tim Duncan or a Tony Parker yelling at somebody. They're coaching up their teammates. They're talking about things they may have seen or may have missed. They're not chastising anybody, and that's what grown men players don't want being around LeBron, is to be yelled at on the sideline because he's getting a paycheck just like you. His just may be larger.
Well, that's a very interesting point because, as you know, the media has been very soft with LeBron James. They've treated LeBron James the same way they've treated Osweiler. They only accentuate the positives. And I look at the Laker organization, and I know that there will be some moves made because the salary cap is going to be so high, and they'll probably find a way to get that team back on track. I look at last night around the NBA. Golden State defeated the Jazz 115-94. Steph Curry again had a great game. Their streak is now 46 in a row at home. A game that may have been somewhat surprising, but not really. The Thunder beat the Clippers 120-108. Russell Westbrook had 25 points and a career-high 20 assists, 11 rebounds. I know we talk about players going on to different teams, Big C, but Durant and Westbrook, they also have a little bit of pushback from each other, even though they smile and grin on TV. What are your thoughts on the two of those people being in Oklahoma City next year?
Well, I only think one will be in Oklahoma City. Now, Westbrook would be a great fit in Los Angeles. Los Angeles needs leadership. Westbrook is a leader. He's a point guard that's a leader. They have a lot of young big men in L.A. Now, Westbrook could accentuate what they're doing because his penetration and ball handling skills.
Yeah.
Plus, he went to UCLA, so it'd be a natural fit as far as a fanfare, him coming back home. L.A. is going to have a new day. They're going to have to retool their team. They're going to need to bring in at least two solid veterans. Now, if you look at a Michael Westbrook, you look at a Kevin Love, would that not be a perfect fit? Two former UCLA Bruins coming back home to Los Angeles?
Yeah, well, Kevin Love, Russell Westbrook, I think they would be the talk. I still think that LeBron would be a big media sell. Not that they need to do anything to sell tickets because they're paying for this thing that Kobe's helped put together. And one more thing I want to cover in the last 2 minutes of the program, Big C. At the game last night, and I know Shaquille O'Neal likes this guy because he's part of the Sacramento Kings organization, but DeMarcus Cousins, you can see how great LeBron James is and how great Kyrie Irving is, but DeMarcus Cousins, even though he has Rondo to help out giving him the ball, he pouts so much. He's such a dominant player, a Western Conference All-Star. But another incident that happened last night, at the end of the game, he was yelling at some of his assistant coaches and even got into a verbal altercation again with Coach George Karl, who's been dealing with his own health issues with cancer. I think, ironically, with a new arena being built downtown Sacramento, even the Kings television announcer last night mentioned they got to get rid of this guy. It's a joke to have people believe that this is all the best you can do. Your thoughts on that, Big C?
The best move with Cousins would be to trade him for another former Kentucky player. And that's Anthony Davis out of New Orleans.
Yeah.
If they could make that swap to bring Davis to Sacramento, send Cousins down to New Orleans, get him out of a media mecca in California, let him lay low in the NBA annals. So that and if you really want to get the guy, send him to Philadelphia. I think they still have a team.
Oh, they still have a team there. That's Dr. J territory.
But you send him out to Philadelphia, let him hang out in Philadelphia where he gets no media coverage. Maybe he'll shut his mouth and just play basketball.
But do you think it's just him? Because players only, people treat you the way you let them. And when you have an organization, it was different when the Maloofs ran the organization. Now they have a different mentality in here. It's more like corporate. They're more concerned with how great an arena they're going to have as opposed to how great the product's going to be.
What it's come down to is this new age generation of players.
Yeah.
I remember Emmitt Smith saying it